And we're going to stick with trade right now, not just what's going on with India, but also what's going on with gold. And specifically, this really points to Switzerland. Gold futures in New York this morning surging to a record high after sources telling us at Bloomberg that Swiss gold bars are unexpectedly facing U.S. tariffs.
America's mining industry is collapsing, and scientists say this might be permanent. From Arizona to West Virginia, U.S. mines are shutting down overnight. Workers are being laid off by the thousands. Entire towns are vanishing. And while the US stumbles, Canada is quietly taking over. They're not just filling the gap, they're building an empire. The minerals behind electric cars, smartphones, and military weapons are slipping out of American hands, and scientists are sounding the alarm. This isn't just an economic disaster, it's a strategic meltdown. What triggered this collapse, and can the US stop Canada's takeover before it's too late?
America is often criticized for being short-term in its orientation, quick to change course. In fact, Washington often shows a steely consistency in its foreign policy. Donald Trump's sudden, inexplicable hostility toward India reverses policies pursued under 5 administrations, including his own previous one. If it holds, this reversal may be the biggest strategic mistake of the Trump presidency so far.
It all started with a risky political move. President Trump put high taxes on metals that are brought into the country, such as copper, nickel, rare earths, and even Swiss gold bars. His government said this was a matter of national security and that the U.S. had to keep its bedrock industries safe from competition from other countries. What is the goal? Come back to America and mine for jobs. As a result, a mess of chaos that spreads. Canada, which gives the U.S. the most raw minerals, fought back right away. Because of this, exports went to Europe and Asia instead of the U.S. There used to be a tight supply chain between the two neighbors, but it started to fall apart almost overnight. It happened right away in mining towns all over the United States. Some of the biggest copper plants in Arizona stopped working. Coal pits that supplied steel mills and power plants with fuel closed their doors in West Virginia and Wyoming. Rare earth extraction sites in Nevada, which were once seen as the key to making the U.S. less dependent on China, cut back on output. All of a sudden, thousands of American workers lost their jobs. Whole towns whose economies depended on mining saw them fall apart. Rail cars were just sitting there. Plants that make things went dark. Orders had disappeared for contractors and suppliers. The goal of tariffs was to make mines stronger again. In the end, though, the U.S. shut down the very business it had promised to protect. How the U.S. economy is affected by ripples. The damage doesn't end at the pit head when digging stops. It gets into workplaces, homes, and supply chains all over the country. The first industry to feel the pinch was manufacturing. Michigan automakers said they were having trouble getting enough copper wiring, motors, and computer parts. Electronics makers in California and Texas said that making smartphones and computers would take longer than planned. It was hard for even defense companies to get rare earths for missiles, radar systems, and stealth aircraft. The next ones were energy projects. There were delays at wind farms in Texas and solar installations in California because they couldn't get enough wiring-grade copper and specialty alloys. Plans to update the U.S. power grid were held up at a time when more people needed energy than ever. Then there was the effect on the customer. When companies pay more, customers have to pay more in the end. The price of electric cars went up. Things like air conditioners and freezers that are used in the home got more expensive. The cost of making new homes also went up because the materials used in plumbing, wiring, and HVAC systems got more expensive. It had impacts on housing and finance as well. Because they were afraid of long-lasting downturns, banks in mining areas limited the loans they gave to local businesses. As mining profits stopped coming in, state governments cut their budgets. As property tax income dropped, even schools were afraid of having to lay off workers. In short, the economic shock didn't just affect the mines, it hit the heart of American business and daily life. Canada's gains on the world market. America made a mistake, but Canada took advantage of the chance. To make up for the drop in U.S. production, Canadian mining businesses increased their exports. It was easy for trucks and rail cars to get to smelters and ports from the nickel mines in Sudbury, Ontario, to the copper belts in British Columbia. Canada did more than just sell rocks, though. It ensured long-term power. Trade officials signed deals with the EU, Japan, and South Korea that made them bigger. Deals like CPTPP and CETA have made it possible for Canadian goods to enter key global markets without having to pay tariffs. Because buyers were afraid of the US's changing policies, they started permanently shifting their supply lines to Canadian producers. At the same time, Canadian companies used their money to buy new technologies like robotics, digital mine planning, and advanced refining systems. They spent money to make the ports at Vancouver and Prince Rupert bigger so they could send more goods overseas. Canada became a leader in rare earth processing, which used to be a weak spot for North America. Not only did Ottawa fund projects to process its own waste, but it also did so to get waste from friends like Australia and Africa. As a result, Canada is setting itself up to be the center of rare earth mining in the Western Hemisphere. Canada, in short, saw a trade war between the US and Canada as a chance. And now it's almost ready to take over the resources that keep the world economy going. Changes in geopolitics and strategy. This isn't just about money. It has to do with world power. For many years, the United States' control over energy and raw materials gave it a lot of power in trade deals, sanctions, and military alliances. It was safe to get copper, nickel, or coal from the US supply line. Today, though, that balance is different. Allies like South Korea and Japan are talking to Canada about making multi-year mining deals, which will make them less dependent on the United States. The European Union is buying metals from Canada to power wind farms, electric vehicle factories, and renewable power lines because it wants to go green faster. Even developing countries are changing their minds because they trust Canada's safety more than America's lack of predictability. Why does this matter? Because flows of resources are power. Negotiations are run by countries that hold important minerals. They have an effect on trade deals, climate agreements, and even military partnerships. The United States risks more than just higher prices when it falls behind Canada. It could lose the strategic edge that comes with providing resources to the world. And in a time of rising pressures, like the war in Ukraine and the race to beat China, that loss of power is a big deal. In the US, the effects on communities and politics. At the ground level, the pain is real. People who used to make steady wages in Arizona's Copper Belt now have to work hard to pay their bills. Young people in West Virginia's coal towns aren't sure if they'll have to leave home to find work. As mining families cut back on spending, small businesses like diners, car lots, and hardware shops lose customers. The local governments are in a mess. Property taxes from the mining business pay for a lot of schools, fire departments, and hospitals in many mining counties. When mines close, they lose money and might have to cut back on services. There is more and more political pressure. Governors of states with lots of mines are pleading with Washington for lower tariffs or emergency aid. Both Republican and Democratic members of Congress are warning that the United States is giving up important ground to rivals from other countries. Reversing taxes, on the other hand, is a risky political move. In Washington, it's usually not a good idea to seem soft on trade. The damage has already been done, even if taxes were scrapped tomorrow. Skilled miners who lost their jobs might never come back because they chose other jobs. When equipment is not in use, it needs expensive repairs before it can be used again. If you lose an international deal, it might take years to get it back. There is a simple fear in many American mine towns. What if the jobs never come back? What will happen next? The US has two clear choices. Option 1, talk with Canada about it. Open up material flows across borders again, keep prices stable, and rebuild the North American supply chain that works together. For this kind of deal to happen, politicians would have to find a way to lower tariffs while still protecting local businesses. If it works, it could let mines slowly start up again and keep long-term agreement. Second choice, stay by yourself. Keep the taxes in place and hope that mining in the US picks up. That's not easy to do, though. It takes years, billions of dollars, and approval from the government to start up large-scale mining again. At the same time, Canada makes long-term deals with Asia and Europe to sell goods, which means that US buyers can't buy from them. The world's need for rocks is only going to grow. Copper, nickel, and rare earths are needed for electric cars, renewable energy, smartphones, and defense systems. The US will stay a net importer if it can't provide them. This leaves it open to price increases and changes in foreign policy. There is a lot at stake. This isn't just about mining towns or bad economic times in the short run. It's about whether the US stays in charge of the resources that keep the modern world running, or whether Canada takes over forever. In Canada, on the other hand, the noise of rock trucks and the light from smelters tell a very different story. Mine towns in the United States are getting less busy, but ports and companies in Canada are busier than ever. The change has begun, and unless Washington quickly changes its mind, the balance of material power in North America will lean towards the North for many years to come. What do you think? Has the trade war between the US and China forever hurt the mining industry? Or can the US get back to a state of peace before Canada takes over the world? If you like this video, you will like this video as well.